Hi you guys, it's TA Megan, and you might know that I and my family celebrate Christmas. So maybe you don't want to participate in this extra thing because your family doesn't celebrate Christmas. Maybe you don't mind learning about Christmas. But anyway, I have a lot of Christmas books, so I'm going to start a Holiday Friday reading where I'm going to read some books. Now, this is a really big book. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's called The Christmas Book. And in it, it has short stories and poems, and it has carols, the words to Christmas carols. But I'm going to read you a story out of this book. And I'm going to turn to it. It's called The Christmas Box. And as you can see, it's kind of a long book. So I'm going to read the words, and then I'm going to show you the beautiful artwork when I'm done reading the words. Okay, here we go. The Christmas Box. In a small thatched cottage near the edge of the forest lived 4 pigs. Tom, Bill, Ann, Sam. And with them for much of the year was their guardian, Brock the Badger. The little pigs loved dear, kind Brock, and they looked up to him because of his strength and courage and because of his great wisdom. Winter had come early. By December, the pond was frozen solid and the snow was deep. Every morning when he awoke, Sam the pig thought about Christmas Day. And he looked at the snow and he shivered a little, and he pulled on his little trousers and ran down the stairs. But the kitchen was warm and bright, and a big fire burned in the hearth. Tom cooked the porridge, and Ann set the table with spoons and plates, and Bill ran out to sweep the path or to find a log for the fire. After breakfast, Sam fed the birds. I feed the birds too every morning. They came flying down from the woods, hundreds of them, fluttering and crying and stamping their tiny feet and flapping their slender wings. The big birds, the green woodpeckers and the blue spangled jays, the dusty rooks and the speckled thrushes ate from large earthen dishes and stone troughs which Sam filled with scraps. They were always so hungry that the little birds got no chance. So Sam had a special breakfast table for the robins and the toms, for the wrens and the chaffinches. Here is the first picture. You see him feeding the birds. On a long flat stone were ranged rows of little polished bowls filled with crumbs and savories. The bowls were walnut shells, and every bird had its own tiny brown nutshell. After the bird feeding, Sam went out on his sled. Sometimes Bill and Tom and Ann rode with him. Badger had made the sled, but he never rode in it himself. He was too old and dignified, but he enjoyed watching the 4 little pigs careen down the field and roll in a heap at the bottom. Good old Badger, thought Sam. I will give him a nice Christmas present this year. I'll make him something to take back to his house in the woods when he goes for his long winter's nap. Oh, he must hibernate. We've learned about that. That was as far as Sam actually got, though. Anne was busy knitting a muffler for Badger. It was made of black and white sheep's wool, striped to match Badger's striped head. Bill the gardener was tending a blue hyacinth, which is a type of flower that he kept hidden in his woodshed. Tom the cook had made a cake for Brock. It was stuffed with currants and cherries and almonds, as well as many other things like honeycomb and ants' eggs. Only young Sam had nothing at all. There was plenty of time to make a present, he had told himself carelessly, and he swept up the snow from the path and collected the small birds' walnut shells. "Christmas is coming," said a robin brightly. "Have you got your Christmas cards ready, Sam?" "Christmas cards?" said Sam. "What's that?" "You don't know what a Christmas card is? Why, I'm part of a Christmas card. You won't have a good Christmas without a few cards, Sam." Sam went back to the house, where Anne sat by the fire knitting Badger's muffler. She used a pair of Hollywood knitting needles, which Sam had made. A pile of scarlet holly berries lay in a bowl by her side, and she knitted a berry into the wool for an ornament here and there. Sam sat down by her side and took up the ball of wool. "Can I make a Christmas card for Badger?" he asked. And Anne pondered this for some time, and her little needles clicked in tune with her thoughts. Yes, I think you can," she said at last. "I had forgotten what a Christmas card was like, but now I remember. There is a paint box in the kitchen drawer. It's very, very old, and it belonged to our grandmother. She used to collect colors from the flowers, and she kept them in that box. Go and look for it, Sam." Sam went to the drawer and turned over the odd collection of things that had gathered. There were cough lozenges and candle ends and bits of string and a bunch of rusty keys, a piece of soap, a pencil, all stuck together with gum from the larch trees. And then at the very back, buried under dead leaves, a dried moss, he found a little paint box. Oh my goodness, look how long that muffler is that Anne is making. And then along the side of the book are all these beautiful plants. Here it is. "Oh, Anne, how exciting!" exclaimed Sam, and he carried it to the table. "It's very dry, and the paints all look the same color," said Anne. "But with a good wash, they'll be all right." "Oh, it's a very nice box of paints," said Sam, and he licked each paint carefully with his little pointed tongue. "Ooh, they taste delicious." Now, we know in real life we don't lick paints, right? Nope, these are pretend, because pigs don't live in houses and make mufflers or have paint boxes, do they? Anyway, then he smacked his lips. "The colors are all different underneath, and the tastes are just like the colors. Oh, look, Anne, here's red, and here's green, and here's blue, all underneath this brownie color." He held out the box of the licked paints, which were now colored. The red taste of tomatoes, and the green of wood sorrel, and the blue of forget-me-nots, said Sam. Badger was much interested in the paint box when he came in. "You will want a paintbrush," he said. "You can't use the besom brush or the scrubbing brush or even your own toothbrush to paint a Christmas card, Sam." So Badger plucked a few hairs from his tail and bound them together. Sorry, I'm very thirsty. I gotta take a sip of soda. So Badger plucked a few hairs from his tail and bound them together. Here, a badger brush will be excellent, Sam. Oh, what shall I have to paint on? Asked Sam, and he stuck the little brush to a point and rubbed it in one of the paints. This puzzled everyone. There was no paper at all, and they looked high and low, but it wasn't till Tom was cooking supper that they found the right thing. Tom cracked some eggs and threw the shells in the corner. Sam took one up and used the badger brush upon it. This is what I shall use, he cried, and indeed it was perfect, for smooth and delicate. Bill cut the edges neatly, and Sam practiced his painting upon it, making curves and flourishes. That isn't like a Christmas card, said Anne, leaning over his shoulder. A Christmas card must have a robin on it. You must ask the robin to come and be painted tomorrow, said Brock. He will know all about it. Robins have been painted on Christmas cards for many, many years. I will sit on this holly branch, said Robin. Here is the snow, and here's the holly. I can hold a sprig of mistletoe in my beak if you like. So Sam fetched his little stool and sat in the snow with his paint box and the badger brush, and the robin perched on the holly branch with a mistletoe spring in his beak. It puffed out all its scarlet feathers and stared with unwinking brown eyes at Sam. And he licked his brush and dipped it in the red and the blue and the green, giving the robin a blue feather and a green wing. When he had finished, he thanked the robin and his beautiful eggshells in a hole, put his beautiful eggshells in a hole in the wall, ready for Christmas Day. Nothing except the Christmas card. Oh, I'm sorry. Have you a Christmas present for Badger? Asked Anne. I have nearly finished my scarf, and Tom's cake is now made, and Bill's hyacinth is in bud. What have you made, Sam? Well, nothing except the Christmas card, confessed Sam. If I could knit a pair of stockings or a new cabbage or make a cake, I should know what to have given him, but I can't do anything. I can't do nothing. Anything, corrected Anne. Nothing, said Sam. I can only play my fiddle and fall in the river and steal a few apples and get lost and catch the wind, laughed Anne. Never mind, you shall share my scarf if you like, Sam, for you helped me find the berries. So here's the paint box he found, and here's all the little things he ended up painting. But best of all was his painting of the Christmas robin. You helped me find the sheep's wool, and you got the holly berries for me. Sam shook his head. No, I'm not going to share. I'll have to do something all for myself. He went out to the woods. He trudged through the snow, looking for great Christmas presents. In the holly trees were scarlet clusters of berries, and glossy ivy was adorned with black beads. The rest of the trees, except the yews and the fir trees, were bare, and they stood with boughs uplifted and their trunks faintly smudged with snow. There wasn't a Christmas present anywhere. Then something waved in a thorn bush. Something fluttered like a white flag, and Sam ran forward. The wind was rising, and it made a curious moan and a whistle as it ruffled Sam's ears and made them ache with cold. He stretched up to the little flag and found it to be a feather. A feather! Sam had a thought. Perhaps the wind blew it to him. But there it was, the feather. I'll make him a feather bed. And when he goes to the castle deep in the woods, he will take it with him to lie upon. Oh, poor old Badger, sleeping alone on the hard ground. Yes, I'm going to make him a feather bed. When the birds came for their breakfast the next morning, Sam spoke to them about it. So, can you spare a feather or two? I want to make a feather bed for old Badger's Christmas present, he told all the birds. The birds shook their wings and dropped a loose feather. They brushed and combed themselves and tossed little feathers to the ground. They passed the word around amongst all the tree families, and the other birds came flying with little feathers in their beaks for Sam Pig. A flock of starlings left a heap of glistening shot silk, and the rooks came from the bare elms with sleek black quills. The chattering magpies brought their black and white feathers, which Sam thought were much like Badger's head. The jays came with their bright blue jewels, and the robins with their scarlet wisps. A crowd of toms gave them their own soft little many-colored feathers, and even the wood pigeons left gray feathers for Sam. Oh, he had so many. The air was clouded with feathers, so that it seemed to be snowing again. He gathered them up and filled his sack, and even then he had some extras left. On Christmas Day, Sam came downstairs to the kitchen calling, "Merry Christmas!" to everyone. And there stood Badger with a twinkle in his eye. Anne gave him the black and white muffler and its little scarlet berries interwoven. "Here's a muffler for those extra cold days in the forest, Brock," she said. "Oh, it's just the thing for nights when I go hunting," said Brock, nodding his head and wrapping the muffler around his neck. Then Bill gave him the little blue hyacinth flower growing in a pot. "Here is a flower for you, Brock, which I've raised myself." "Oh, thank you, Bill. It's the flower I love," said Brock as he sniffed in the sweet scent. Then Tom came forward with the cake, which was prickly with almonds and seeds from many different kinds of plants. "Here's a cake, Brock, and it's got so many things inside. I've lost count of them, but there's honeycomb and eggs, which I know are your favorite." "Ah, you know how I like a nice slice of cake," said Brock, taking the great round cake, which was heavily laden. Then little Sam came with the feather bed. He embroidered it with the letter B, made of black and white magpie feathers. So let's look at the borders on here. We got some more nice Christmassy flowers. And there's all the birds leaving Sam their feathers. Oh, look at all those feathers they left. No wonder he had extras. So Sam is bringing forth his. "Sam! Oh, Sam!" everyone cried. "And you kept it a secret that you were doing every morning when the birds came for their breakfast? We thought there seemed to be a lot of feathers upon the ground." Badger lay down on the little bed and pretended to snore. He was delighted with the warm and comfortable presents from little Sam Pig. "Never mind the weather, but sleep upon a feather," he said. "I shall sleep like a top through the fiercest gale when I lie upon this little warm bed." Then they ate their breakfast with a lashing of treacle, which is a nice sweet kind of syrup that they use in England. I love it. Maybe they have it in the international section. You could try it. Anyway, with a lashing of treacle upon their porridge from the tin which Anne had kept for special occasions. Then Sam hurried out and to feed the birds and to thank them again for their share in Badger's Christmas. But when he stepped into the garden, he gave a cry of surprise, for in the flower bed grew a strange little tree. "Look, look," he called. "Anne, Bill, Tom, Badger, come and look. It wasn't growing last night. Where has it come from? And look at the funny fruit hanging upon it. What is it?" They followed him out and stared in astonishment at the small fir tree, all hung with pretty things. There were sugar pigs with pink noses and curly tails of string, and sugar watches with linked chains of white sugar, and chocolate mice. There were rosy apples and golden oranges. And among the dainties were glittering icicles of frost crystals. "Where has it come from? How did it grow here?" they asked, and they all turned to Badger. "Is it magic?" they asked. "Will it disappear? Is it really real?" "It's solid enough, for the tree has come from the woods," smiled Badger. "But the other things will disappear fast enough, I warrant, when you four get near them." "But what about your Christmas cards, Sam?" Anne asked suddenly. "This is the time to give them." "I sat on them, Anne," confessed Sam. "I put them on a chair and I sat down on them." "Crushed Christmas cards," murmured Tom, the cook. "They will do very well to give an extra flavor to our soup. Those reds and blues and greens will make our soup taste extra good, I am sure." As for the Christmas tree, everybody shared in it, for the birds flew down to its branches and sang a Christmas carol and thanks for their breakfast. And Sam sat underneath and sang another carol and thanks for all of their feathers. All right, there they are, exchanging their gifts. And there's lots of Christmassy things at the top. And there's Badger's Christmas tree that he gave them. And there is the bed that Sam made Badger. And that is the end of this story. I hope you liked it. I was wondering if they even wrote down who wrote this book. It just says who they were selected by, but all of the pictures are by Annabelle Spenceley. I really like this book. I hope you liked it. And I'll have another special book next Friday for you. All right, bye-bye.